checks. Take one.
Thank you.
And I see your reflection, Chris, so you can come on back down here if you would.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's cool.
Okay. So, Al, can you tell me about that cup and hold it up in your hands, about this chest level? And
Sure. This cup was my cup in prison the entire time that I was there, once the cup was issued to me. It was brand new when I received it, and when you look closely, you can see it's had some hard times as the enamel has chipped away from the edge and so forth, but it's a large cup. We were told that the writing on it carries a message from, as I recall, the friendly Korean people to the people of Vietnam. At the moment, I don't recall what that message was, but it was, I think, just as a token of friendship. One would never know how much it holds. I always used to think it was about 8 ounces. As it turns out, it holds 20 ounces, which is quite a surprise, but that's often the way of containers. It's a little hard to tell what they hold. This was with me through thick and thin. Not only did I use it to hold the water that we were given to drink, on very rare occasions there were other things we were given to drink. On Ho Chi Minh's birthday, we'd get a little bit of beer, their local beer. Sometimes a liqueur, which it might be just a quarter to a half an inch on the bottom of this cup. An orange liqueur, which was very good, I thought. Not that I'd want to drink enough to get happy with it, but both the beer and the liqueur were pretty good. But again, that was once a year. More importantly, perhaps, the cup was used in many situations for communication. We would hold the cup against the wall, and there were various methods of doing that to avoid being heard outside the cell. But some people would wrap a blanket around it. Others, I never used a blanket because I didn't want to get caught with a blanket and the cup at the same time. I could hold it against the wall and make a seal around my lips and pinch off my nose and scream into the cup and barely be heard on the other side of the room inside, let alone outside. So it was a great communication device. You talked into the cup. You'd put this up on a brick wall or a concrete wall. It didn't work on wood. And to help you hear, after you'd finished talking through it, then you could quickly snap your head around, put your ear up inside the cup, and that would help you to hear better what the person on the other side was saying. We called this cup talking. And it worked very, very well. Just one of the many ingenious devices that we developed in prison, just trying to get along and spread the word.
Wonderful. What did you
I didn't get any of that.
You didn't get any of that?
No, that's why I said battery
It's a
died.
battery.
And then
It's okay.
attach it.
Oh, I didn't hear the battery
Yes.
died. I got headphones on.
Yep.
Okay. As long as you, oh, you didn't get anything?
No, I didn't get any of that.
It's okay, it's okay.
Okay. Lower
Bring
it
it
down a
in.
little bit. There you go.
Take two.
Okay. So Al, tell me about that cup, please.
Well, as prisoners of the North Vietnamese, there were very few items that we were allowed to have in our possession. For what reason, I suppose that it was a matter of security from the North Vietnamese standpoint. But this was one of those basic items. And I can actually discuss them all pretty briefly. There was a cup, a spoon, of which this is a sample, a fan made out of bamboo reed for keeping cool, and then besides our clothing, 2 blankets, which were rather minimal, but they did work. The cup figured in everything that we ate or drank. Primarily, the drink was water, and it was hot water always, winter or summer, because the water, if we drank it without it being boiled, would probably kill us with whatever might be in it. So we had little tea kettles, and we put the water in here, let it cool down a little bit, and then we could drink the water. 2 times a year, generally speaking, there was also a special occasion, Ho Chi Minh's birthday or Independence Day. Forgotten the other one now. Anyway,
Christmas. Was Christmas?
Yeah, Christmas. So on usually about 2 occasions throughout the year, they would give us a little something special. We might get perhaps a quarter of a cup of beer or an orange liqueur, which was very sweet, quite good actually. Perhaps a quarter to a half an inch in this cup, not very much usually. But it was very good liqueur, and particularly to someone who was not getting any at all other than that. And so we appreciated that. But as for how much that might be, you might be surprised to learn that this cup, instead of being 6 or 8 ounces, as one would think, and I did originally, this cup will hold 20 ounces right to the brim. So quite a bit to drink in there. The message in writing on this cup, we were told by the Vietnamese, is a message of solidarity between the friendly North Korean, although they just called themselves the Korean people, and the Vietnamese people. And this was a token of that friendship. So they, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands they provided to their friendly neighbors in North Vietnam, but we were given these cups to use. Some of the other POWs occasionally received an aluminum cup instead of this, but this particular cup I had with me my entire captivity. So 6 years and 4 months in the jails of North Vietnam, I had this cup with me.
And had another use as well, for communication?
That's correct, and that may have been a more important use. We did, in some instances where we were living in buildings that were made of masonry, concrete, brick, block, or whatever, we could communicate through the walls with these cups. We would place a cup on the wall and with the open top to us, and we could place our mouth in the cup and talk through the wall to a person on the other side if they knew we were speaking to them. So first we'd have to call them up with our signal, which was shave and a haircut. They'd answer when they were ready, and we'd get on the wall. And after a few introductory comments, you determined that you were lined up and all. And some of the guys would wrap a blanket around us to muffle the sound. I was able to just seal off around my cheeks with my hands and pinch off my nose with the fingers, and I could scream into this cup. And not that I normally did scream, but I could speak that loudly into the cup and barely be heard across the cell that I was in. Whereas on the other hand, what was going out the bottom of the cup through the wall and into the cup on the other side, the fellow would have the bottom of his cup against the wall as well, with his ear in it. And so you would listen, and this would amplify it. It's very much on the order of the old cup with a string between, you know, two tin cups, and that we did as children. It works kind of the same way. It does amplify the sound, both outgoing and incoming, work quite well.
Wonderful.
I'm gonna go in on the cup.
Okay. Al, if you could hold the cup so that he could see it, feature it Yeah, exactly.
Down just a little bit, sir. And then could you spin it around slowly so I can see the
Handle?
handle, thank you. And just spin around a little bit like you're talking about, like you're showcasing it. Down just slightly, sir. Yes, sir, and then just spin it around and talk about it. And tilt it toward me just a little bit so I can see inside. Yeah, that's good. You good, Patrick?
Yeah.
I got that as well.
Okay, so let's keep rolling.
Okay.
You talked about the Vietnamese having 2 celebrations a year, that something special would happen. You have 2 celebrations a year. Can you tell me about that?
I celebrate everything under the sun, but I have 2 rather significant celebrations per year. I think you're talking about my birthday, and the day I was released I refer to as my rebirthday. And we, at the very least, observe that every year. My birthday, as it turns out, is on the 14th of March, and my rebirthday is on the 4th of March. That's the date that I was released, and a date that is pretty significant to me, marking the end of a very unpleasant time for me and all the rest of my family.
Wow. And can you show me the pouch and explain how that came into being?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be what we refer to as letter writers there. We never knew why, but the Vietnamese allowed some of us, and I wouldn't even know the percentage, but it might have been 15 or 20%, to write letters on occasionally to our families back home and to receive letters. That's the way it was for me. And fortunately, Carolyn, my wife, was thinking of the importance of this communication to the point she realized that not only the words from her, but pictures would be very helpful. And so she sent quite a number of pictures over 6.5 years. And this would be, I think, all of them. There might have been a few that got lost or damaged for some reason. And I felt that in that humidity and high temperature environment in which I lived, these pictures wouldn't last too long unless I could protect them. So the Vietnamese furnished them to us already enclosed in plastic. And what I did was, to make that situation even better, I thought, was to connect them together and make a pouch to hold them. Now, the pouch was made out of old cast-off clothing or pajamas that we wore. These look pretty good, so I'm not sure which set this came from. But when we got to shave, which was every couple of weeks, I'd take a razor and cut out the pieces of cloth that I needed to make this, and then get the thread from a blanket. Now that might sound like it wouldn't be too good an idea, making an already threadbare blanket even worse, but I wanted this. So I'd pull a thread out of the blanket, and I made a needle, fashioned it out of bone, sharpened it, made a hole in it to hold the thread, and used that needle and thread to sew this up, a pouch that's something I could carry with me all the time, sling it over my shoulder and not lose it. And once the Vietnamese realized what it was and there was no threat to them, they never gave me any trouble over it. So it worked out very well, and so I have it to this day, and the pictures are still in good shape.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Let me see the front of the pouch.
Okay, if you could hold the pouch up so that he can see the front of it. Yeah, you could put the photos in it. Beautifully made. And go ahead and flop the top over onto it. There we go, great. Is that good, Kent?
Perfect. Good. Still rolling.
Yeah, we had no zippers or other fasteners, so our shorts and everything else were held up with a piece of cloth fashioned into a string, so to speak, and so I used the same concept here, and it worked out very well.
That's great. You're getting that right? Good. Beautiful, beautiful. And then your POW bracelet, can you tell me about when you first became aware of?
That was a slow thing.
Would you mind
Oh.
holding it up?
There's my needle.
Oh. Hold that up to his camera.
Yeah, this just fell out of the pouch, but that's the needle I used to make the pouch and to sew up clothes when I felt that I needed to.
Okay.
And then hold that to my camera if you would as well. Beautiful. That's great. Wonderful. Nice. Okay, let's take a look at that bracelet.
The bracelets are some of the other prisoners received pictures in sequence. We might get a letter or pictures every 2 or 3 months. And I don't recall who it was, but I think it was one of the guys from California had received pictures of family members, his wife or one of his children, seated together and very conspicuously wearing one of these bracelets. And we didn't know what it was for a while, but then he realized this was showing up in every picture and was obviously being shown off. So we got to looking at them closer and realized that there's a name on here. And then from that we figured out that these were bracelets made for that purpose. Didn't know that it was a national movement, but it started out, I think, locally and rather quickly grew into a national movement back at that time. So that's where these came from. They made these in stainless steel and in copper. I think maybe there was some that were just steel too, or aluminum, but they made them in 2 or 3 different things. And Carolyn got involved in selling these in our home area. She was living in Maine, where we're from, and so she sold a lot of these. I don't know how many, but a whole lot.
And what would people do with them over the country? And what did it mean to you when you figured out this was?
The people were showing solidarity with the military members, whether or not for the war effort. Some did, some didn't, but it was certainly to show that they were thinking of and caring for their service member or service members in general. And in fact, most of these ended up outside of the family. I still occasionally will hear from a bracelet wearer. In fact, I just did a couple of weeks ago, a woman who, I think it was her husband or son, was cleaning out the garage and some old stuff and found artifacts from her high school days, and among them was a bracelet. And she felt motivated from that to contact me, and she did a search and found me and sent me a letter advising me that she had my bracelet and asking if I would like to have it back. Well, I never had it to start with, so, but that's the way people look at it. Would you like your bracelet back? And I'm saying, well, that's up to you. If you'd care to send it, that's fine, but if not, just keep it as a symbol of a rough time that we went through together. And I'd say probably most of the people nowadays anyway will keep them. But I have a shoebox full of bracelets that I received in the first several months that I was released, after I was released.
Do you want to hold that bracelet up so that Ken can see the writing? Can you see that, Ken?
And you're okay with reflections on glasses, right?
Yeah, yeah. Embrace it.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Okay, let's go ahead and set the bracelet down. I want to get a few wild lines that we can use for some of the things we did. And I'll let you try to put this into your own words, but basically we you were riding on your tractor. This is your land.
Mhm.
It means a lot to you. You're back home with your wife. You've raised your kids. So freedom has a very, very special meaning to you, and it's not sometimes the big things where freedom is expressed, but the small ones, going down and turning on your tractor and driving
Mhm.
off. And so if you could say something about, I enjoy working around my home. I've got a tractor and I use it for this or that, and then we'll similarly turn to when you're sitting on the point talking about the drone and looking out over the water and enjoying the breeze and whatever it is. But in your own words, I'll use this. I won't necessarily use what you're saying on camera. It'll be a voiceover for the stuff we shot out there. So let's talk about the tractor first and working around your land. And if you could tie it into the joy it gives you in terms of just freedom of movement, freedom of choice.
Well, it's like so many things. It's not just one single issue or one single time, but where we are in our lives and in our location is the culmination of good times, bad times, hard times. But now we're in the twilight, if not the December of our years. We're in a nice place here. We have a place that we can enjoy the view from. It's a great place for our children and grandchildren, friends, neighbors to come. We have an occasional party or outing, barbecues, that sort of thing. It's a good-sized piece of property. Right now, what remains is about 11 acres. And it is not easy to maintain 11 acres of woodland, mostly in marsh, without the help of some equipment. So we felt a need early on to have a tractor that could haul the implements and the like that we would need to help us do things here. So this Kubota tractor that we have now is the second tractor that we've had. We had initially an international tractor from way back in my days as a young farm boy. But Kubota now with a bucket on it to do the lifting and carrying of materials or tools to and from a job site is really essential. It would be almost impossible to keep the place going without that. So it's a sort of thing that's an essential tool, but it's also greatly appreciated because it represents where we are in life, what we've earned, and to maintain our lifestyle and all, it's an integral part of that. So the tractor has a lot of meaning to us. I've reached a point where I don't use it as much as my wife does. Carolyn works hard around here. She's more concerned about the place looking great than I am. And she does keep it looking great. Keeps the pine cones up. And I do the heavy lifting, of course, which means I just sit on the seat and drive around with the bush hog or the bucket and do the work with it. I have in the past needed to do quite a lot of cutting of trees, dead trees mostly. We have pine bark beetle infestation here, and that's caused us to lose a lot of trees. But there's brush that keeps growing up around and the like. So I used to have about 4 chainsaws. I have 2 new ones now that keep me busy with that. And the bucket and the tractor is handy to take the wood either to a place where I'm going to use it or to my burn pile and burn the limbs and trash. So it's the tractor and all these other tools are just essential to the kind of lifestyle that we have right here. We're in the process, though, of divesting. At 80 years of age, I need to back away from this and not have to maintain all this sort of thing. So I don't know, the place may grow up and overwhelm us before long.
You say something to the effect that you live on a piece of land that has 270 degrees of water view, and that you like to go out and, you know, maybe sit on your lawnmower and work with a drone where you can even see farther, and you can, like, as a pilot, you've got all these different ways in which flight means something to you. Can you say something along that line?
Yeah, drone does help me to sort of connect the dots from the past to the present and look into the future, so I'm able to fly for a whole lot less work now than it used to take me, because I used to go from here up to my field. I'd have to open the hangar doors, pin them down, pull the plane out, get it ready to go, get it fueled, do all that sort of thing. It was a labor of love, but looking back on it, it's more work than I want to do right now, or I'm capable of doing. I'm having severe back problems, and so there's only so much I can do. The drone allows me to get some of the joy of flying back, or to retain some of that, and I can hop on the lawnmower, lawn tractor, and drive it out there and sit where I want to be able to fly and take a look around. We can look at our property, we can look up and down the river. There's a lot to see from right here, and sitting on the tractor or the lawnmower makes it easier for me to do that. If I were to just stand, I'm only good for about 10 minutes and then it's over. But it retains that sense of freedom, which we've always known and recognized, and having been deprived of it for 6.5 years, it's a nice touch to be able to exercise it at a moment's notice. And I can do that with a quadcopter drone, and I enjoy doing it.
Beautiful. And, sir, I assume that you raise the American flag every morning?
Actually, I leave the flag up. We have a light on it that goes on in times of darkness, and the flag is up all the time, except for heavy weather. If we get excessive winds, I go through a lot of flags. That's a 6 by 10 foot flag. It's a big flag. And that particular one is up today to suit these winds. That's a nylon, rather typical nylon flag, but I have some heavy weather flags too, made out of a much heavier material. But if you got 20 knots of wind blowing, it will fly them just as well as this 10 knots of wind flies that nylon. I will normally go through 2 or 3 American flags a year. And then we also fly, usually on that pole I'll have the Virginia state flag, and then I have another pole, my old flagpole, which is 10 feet shorter than that one. We will, on certain occasions, put the POW flag up there, or the Gadsden flag, which is important to us. We've had some other flags that we've displayed there in times past for various reasons, and no need to discuss that.
What does it mean to you particularly to have the American flag flying above your home, sir?
It's very important to me, as you can see, because it represents everything I am, everything I've been, everything I hope to be, everything that's good about this country. All the care and sacrifice of my fellow warriors and others who serve without going to war, but those who care enough to contribute. And realize that there's a special reason for contributing. Without this wonderful country we have, and it was formed through the blood and sacrifice of those who preceded us. Without that, we'd be living in a communist country. I've lived in a communist country. I don't want that for me and my family, and I don't want it for the rest of my country. So this flag brings it all into focus for me. This represents more of what my life and that of my neighbors, my friends and family all around the country are all about than any other individual symbol. So those who would disparage it and fail to honor it, I feel sorry for, but I have no use for them. They may have arrived at their conclusions through ignorance or malice, and I don't care. I know who I am, I know what I am, and why I am. And that flag embodies it all. Yeah, I do get emotional when talking about patriotism, love of country. Certain aspects of it I can't even discuss at all. The C-141s that came in to pick us up. But they had that flag on their tail. And when I saw it, I knew I was going home. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Al. Okay?
Yeah. So, cut for a second.
Yeah.
I think the lowest I felt was, I don't recall what was going on in camp. Usually we could identify some reason with the way we were being treated. Either better food, worse food, more time outside, or no time outside, those kinds of things. And anyway, I don't recall that there was any specific thing that I could tie it to, but I was taken out to quiz, interrogation, and taken to a place that I normally did not go to. And I don't even recall the subject of the quiz at this point in time, but they had me there not to really try to indoctrinate me with their propaganda or anything. At that point, I think they had something in mind. They wanted to get my attention, and they did. And it ended up being a torture session with me rolling around on the concrete floor with 2 or 3 guards holding me down and twisting my arms behind my back. And I don't even recall what they were asking for, but I think the interrogator was there, who was in and out of the room at the time, would say, and now you will write a letter to President Johnson and the American people, telling about the perfidious acts of your government and your people, or military people over here. They frequently wanted something like that. Well, what they were doing was feeding the propaganda effort back in the States, or trying to. And apparently they were successful to a large degree. They got to college campuses and all that sort of thing through friends of their movement. But at any rate, they wanted me to do something and I wasn't going to do it, so they were twisting me around, getting my attention. And the one thing that concerned me most was one of the guards, who was a very mean, vicious individual, saw an opportunity to, I guess, get some personal pleasure out of hurting another human being, and he was trying to pop one of my eyes out, and he got a finger in the eye socket and was working it around to get behind it. I knew what he was doing. It was pretty obvious, as the pressure on the eyeball was tremendous, and if he'd had another few seconds, he would have gotten his finger behind that and popped my eyeball out. And just psychologically, that was about all I could take, to say nothing of the pain associated with it. So, fortunately, one of the senior people in the room noticed what he was doing and yelled at him, and he stopped. Shortly after that, they had me in ropes. They took me out of the ropes, which they frequently used to torture us with. And left. I think it was in the afternoon. They left, and that was it for the day. They locked the door behind them, and the room had bars on the windows, and the windows were shuttered closed, and the door was closed, and so was. I think they left me lying on the floor. Pretty sure they did. There was no bed in there. And I felt terrible because in the process of all that, of course, when they put enough pressure on me, I had said, sure, okay, I'll do whatever you want. And it was an awful feeling of despair, feeling you're the only one in the world who's done that. None of these other guys who were there in camp with you have done it. You're the only one. That's the feeling that you had initially. And it was overwhelming. And it was very defeating, because we went in with a John Wayne attitude that we were heroes, and I say we, I'm speaking for myself, but I think most young American guys, particularly warriors, thought, we've got the world by the butt, we can handle anything. And it's very discouraging to find out that you can't. And so now you've resisted as best you could, and it turned out it wasn't adequate. And you're not happy with the amount of resistance that you made. And you've given them something with a feeling that it was for nothing.
I'm sorry, Al.
Sure.
Who's